Hello, my name is Daniel Yuck. Thank you for watching my video today. I appreciate your time. In today's video, I'm going to share with you how I go about creating pixel style tattoos, from how I make my stencils to how I technically apply the tattoo. I'm going to share with you all of that here in this video. My goal with this video is to provide you with enough information so by the end of this video, you can click away knowing how to tattoo a pixel style tattoo on your end. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell for me, as I'm going to be bringing more videos like this for you. Should you have any questions at any point throughout this video, I'm going to encourage you to drop a comment down below. I will do my absolute best to assist you in the best possible direction. Now let's get right on into this. For me, when it comes to pixel style tattoos, it's important that I get that stencil nice and clean. It's important that I'm able to see all of the fine edges and essentially where every single pixel is supposed to be. So I'm going to want to pay close attention from the beginning to the very end. It starts with a great stencil. So I need to map out a great stencil. For this demonstration, I'm going to be using Mew here to visually get my points across. One of my favorite things about pixel style tattoos is that you're going to really have to trust the process, and you're going to see what I mean throughout the video here. When I am stenciling a design, there are a couple of ways that we can go about stenciling a pixel style tattoo. We can literally do each individual square by square. Me personally, I like to kind of structurize things in a better format. Allow me to elaborate here. One of my key focus points is the final read of the tattoo. I don't want my pixels to have any sort of round edges, or I don't want the final read to be wonky. Allow me to demonstrate here. You can see that I'm making the stencil by filling each and every one of these squares in one by one. Now, don't get me wrong, if you feel more comfortable doing it this way, I encourage you to do what you feel comfortable with. But for me, I'm not liking these results. In the end, I feel I would get a sort of a wonky design. This isn't something that I would feel comfortable doing, stenciling out this way, because each and every pixel that I'm applying, I'm going to have to wonder where they connect and where they end. To me, this is more of a tedious workflow. This is a workflow that I would want to avoid, and that I can avoid by simply putting a little bit more care and thought into the stencil. There is going to be a couple of steps that I'm thinking about with this new way that I go about creating pixel stencils. I'm imagining a point A to B, so you can see one pixel starts and another begins, and then I connect those. And you can see the lines are coming out a lot more consistent in shape, and the lines themselves look a lot better sitting next to one another. Not only that, doing it this way also can provide me with a safer foundation to actually apply this tattoo when it comes down to actually tattooing it. Every single pixel is going to be connected. I don't have to guess where the next one ends or starts. You can kind of get the idea. By putting in a little bit more thought and effort up front to making the stencil is going to provide me with an easier and smoother workflow. This in return is going to give me a lot more confidence when I'm applying a tattoo. Therefore, I'm going to be less worried about messing up and more worried about the application itself. And I feel these choices are going to yield better results. So this process of identifying my point A to B is pretty much the exact same process that I'm going to use when I'm actually tattooing. So not only am I mapping out a better tattoo stencil, I'm also planning out how I'm going to technically apply the tattoo. When I print it out and when I get the final size, I can then pick the needle size that I'm going to be using, and I'll get to that here in a bit. But I'm also going to show you clearly and demonstrate this point A to B that I keep speaking about. Now, this point A to B is basically identifying where a line begins and where it ends. And these lines, when I connect them in a certain series, is going to make up the pixels. So instead of doing them one by one, I do it this way to avoid that wonky feel, and also to be able to identify the beginning and end of each individual pixel. Everything is connected, everything is fine-tuned when I do it in this manner right here. So you're going to notice that I repeat that process, and some pixels actually connect to maybe about 4 or 5 pixels, and I'm going to show you different designs too to really get these points across. Allow me to demonstrate a little bit more. So identify the A point and the B, and then I'm going to connect these two together. And then all of the surrounding lines are going to be worked in the exact same manner. So I'm going to identify my point A and B, and I'm going to continue to connect these lines all the way through until the design is mapped out. You can see on this part of the design, the A and B point extends about maybe 8 or 9 pixels. And then I'm just going to keep neighboring all the lines in the exact same manner. And this is going to provide me with that clean consistency that I'm looking for from my tattoo stencil. That clean consistency, again, is going to provide me with a cleaner stencil, which means I'm going to be able to map out every step of the way. If I'm able to plan out my tattoo, I'm able to provide a better quality tattoo. I'm not going to be focused on messing up and or struggling throughout the process. I'm going to be more focused on the technical application, and that is where I want to be mentally. Here's a good example with a different design, and you're going to see that this one right here extends to even more pixels. However, that is my point A to B. And then again, I'm going to apply and map out the stencil by repeating this process with all of the neighboring lines, identifying the point A to B. A lot of lines are going to be crisscrossing. A lot of lines are going to be going through one another. However, when we're mapping it out like this, identifying those point A and B's and mapping out the areas that need to be mapped out, we do get a much cleaner stencil. Well, at least in my opinion, these are the experiences that I've gone through doing pixel style tattoos. I feel like it's important to note that any pixel style tattoo that I do is going to be mapped out and stenciled in this exact same manner. I will make another video sharing with you how we can go about creating custom pixel designs. For now, I wanted to start at the basics and kind of build our way up from there. So the stencil process is pretty much that, repeated over and over. The only thing that really changes is the designs. Keep in mind, you just want to identify that point A to B and then connect the line from A to B, and then repeat this process with the neighboring lines, crossing the lines until you've completed all of these squares and rectangles. From my experience, this method of creating the stencil has proven to yield far better results. On a side note, the stencils that you see me creating here in these snippets are going to be available for exclusive step-by-step follow-alongs on my Patreon and in the YouTube membership section of my YouTube account. Now that we are a bit more familiar with creating pixel style tattoo stencils, let me share with you how I go about actually tattooing pixel style tattoos. With that being said, let's switch on over to a different angle. So allow me to demonstrate the technical application. I will leave a link for you to this stencil down below so that way you can follow along with me. I'm going to show you how I go about applying the actual pixels, and in another video I'll show you how I go about applying the color. So be sure to hit that subscribe button for me and ring that bell. When it comes to creating pixels, I'm always mindful of that square boxy look. I want to stay true to that integrity. I want to keep those details there. I don't want any round edges or anything like that, as that's not what a pixel tattoo consists of. What that means to me is I'm going to want to be mindful of the tattoo needle that I select. For this tattoo right here, I'm going to go with a Rhein 005 round liner. If I need to, I'll go ahead and down the size to a 3 round liner. But I'm going to start here. Now, this step right here is very, very important. This step right here, I feel, should have thought put into it. This shouldn't be easily overlooked. Now, the reason why I'm going with a Rhein 005 round liner is because I feel that needle is tight enough and easy enough for me to work with, and to stay true to these pixel integrities, I need to capture these squared off pixels here when I'm applying the black. I can't have any round edges or anything like that, and again, that's because a pixel tattoo isn't made up of that. It is typically squared, as you see here. That aspect is very important. I am doing this tattoo on Reelskin fake skin, and the stencil applicant that I use is Greencard along with Spirit stencil paper. I am using dynamic black and just simple petroleum jelly to wipe away the excess ink. That is my entire setup. I will leave my affiliate links for you in the description below so you can check out the gear that I'm using on your end. And I'm also using the Dragonhawk X8 tattoo machine. I'm going to be running at around 4 volts, 5 volts, because I am using a smaller needle configuration. When I'm using a smaller needle, I'll run at a lower voltage. Now, much like creating the stencil, I'm pretty much going to keep the same workflow when I'm applying the tattoo. Nothing is really going to change, and I really exhausted the idea and theory behind creating a pixel tattoo. You really want to trust those A to B points. So same thing for here. So for example, I'm going to start in this area, and then I'm going to want to identify my A to B. If I feel like my voltage is too low, I'll higher it up, but for now we're fine. A to B. And you can see I have a nice clean thin line, and it's not small enough where it's going to take me forever to fill in. It's large enough to fill in nicely and small enough to capture the integrity, which is why I chose this needle. Same thing with right here, A to B. Stabilize myself, get as comfortable as I can, and I'm just going to simply apply the lines to the best of my ability. Dab and keep it moving. I want to make sure that I have adequate ink flow, so that way I'm depositing a consistent amount of ink with the line weight there. So A to B. Make sure that I am comfortable here. You can see this edge right here, this is going to be true to the line weight. So what that means to me is I'm going to be able to find out here if I'm going to need to go down in the line weight. I do feel like these edges are boxed off and squared off, so I'm going to go ahead and keep working with this needle. If I need to change it, I'll go ahead and let you know. But same thing with this right here, A to B. Now you don't necessarily have to do this all in one pass lines. You can build it up like so. If that's how you do your tattoos, feel free to do so. To each their own. For me personally, I like going over it just with a simple line. Then I can go back and then start filling in these areas. Now I can use simple tallies all the way through like so, or I can use circular motions. To each their own. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use just kind of back and forth motions like this, and then I'll go back with the circular motions to kind of lock in everything and saturate the areas I feel I should saturate, should I need to do so. But that's how I'm going to go about applying the black and packing the black in these smaller areas with the exact same needle. I'm not going to change it out. Like in this area right here, if I feel like it's not saturated, then I'll go back over it with some of these circular motions. But the idea is to get it in when I go over it with these tallies the first time and to saturate as much as possible. Now I may be moving a little bit too fast for my voltage. However, I don't want to really take my voltage up because I want more time on the skin. If I take it up, I have to move a little bit quicker, and then I'll also leave room for more errors. Go this way. Now, you can, as the artist, make the choice if you want to move on over to the right or you want to move on over that way. It's going to be to each their own, and I encourage you to exercise those choices. From here, I'm going to acknowledge my A to B, which is going to be from here on down here. Now, you have to kind of trust the lines. This goes back to what I was explaining earlier when making the stencil. We really have to trust that all of this is going to line up when we're done. Now for me, this is just a better way of doing it as opposed to where I line this rectangle, fill this in, and I line this one. For me, the reason again why I don't do that is because I don't want the tattoo to come out with that wonky feel. And then I'm going to do the same thing from here on down. Now since I know that there's going to be a fill in there, I don't need to connect down there. But what I do need to do is make sure that I stay true to the integrity up here. I'll go ahead and get there when I get there. I'm going to still work down here because I'm not up there yet. I'm very mindful of these edges. I don't want to just dive right on in with my needle and create a point here that's blown out, kind of taper into these points here really easily. And this area right here is going to be from A to B. I feel more comfortable actually bringing it this way. A to B, like so. And the same thing, A to B over here. Just like that. And then A to B, I'll get there when I get there. I can begin filling in this area right here. Now, you can fill in as you go, or you can get a little bit thicker of a line weight and kind of fill in this with the same approach, but just with a thicker line weight. I think that's acceptable too. But for me, I feel like doing it with the tallies really doesn't take too much time at all. And then going back and then filling in whatever I need. I feel like this is an effective and time-effective approach as well, which is why I'm using that. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here, A to B. Be mindful when we press down. We don't want to go straight in, so just do a little taper in, and it really does make all the difference. You gotta trust those tapers. And same thing, A on down to B. I'm not gonna run through the line there. I mean, you can cross the lines like this if you want to. And the same thing with this one, kind of close it on out so you can start filling it in. Now the Dragonhawk X8 tattoo machine is a 4mm stroke. This process is going to get repeated throughout the entire tattoo until it's done. I think the idea is to be real patient with the process and apply the tattoo in the same manner throughout the entire tattoo to the best of your ability. I think that's really what it comes down to, and little by little over time we start getting better at the application. So I'm gonna A to B. I'm not gonna go into that area over here as I'm gonna fill it in black. I don't want to cause more trauma. So A to B. And the same thing over here. A to B, A and B. So it's all about really identifying the line and committing with confidence. I think that's really what it comes down to. Make sure you're comfortable before you pull the line. You know, the fundamental, the basics, the essentials there. A to B. But that's the idea of applying a pixel tattoo. So right here, the A's right here, the B's down here. Allow me to explain, or demonstrate rather. Like so. And the same thing, A to B. And then the same thing right here. A to B, and then A to B. And every step of the way, I'm mindful of when I'm going in, make sure I taper, because when this heals, I need all of these points to stay pointy. I don't want them healing with round edges. And a perfect way to get round edges is to just immediately start going in and depositing the ink. You need to taper in so that way we have that crispy edge every time. So even if it's a microscopic taper, it adds up. So taper and then commit. Same thing, taper in and commit. And then A to B. Taper in and commit. Make sure that you have adequate ink flow each and every line you pull. And then the same thing, it's going to be A to B. So you can kind of see by now that this is a repetitive process, And we're going to continue to do this over and over until the entire tattoo is completed. So I think from here, the best choice to make for this demonstration would be to outline it completely, so that way you can, I guess, hear my thought process. I feel the outline is of the utmost important part, as that's pretty much going to be the guide. Once we have the outline, we can begin filling in, taking our time from there. As when we are tattooing, one of the main concerns is losing the stencil. So let's continue and do the outline here. So I'm going to continue with this area, so from A on over to B. Let me make sure the camera is focused before we continue. So we're good. Make sure I'm comfortable. Identified A. And then I'm going to make my way on over to B. Like so. And then right here, A to B. And then we can always go back, fill in everything later. Then right here as well, A to B. So sometimes right here, as you can see, I was gonna go this way. However, I don't really feel like it would be bad to go a little bit up. Make sure we get that taper in at the edge. That's how we get that real boxy look instead of round edges. And then make my way to B. Same thing, taper in right here on A. And then make my way on over to B. A to B. A to B. A to B. And I really can't exhaust enough that I am doing like micro tapers here that may not be shown well on camera. However, they do exist within the workflow. They are happening. So over here, I'm going to do the same thing. A to B. Let me make sure the camera is still in focus. So we're good to go. Right here. So A and then B. Now another reason why I'm running at a very low voltage is because I'm thinking about when a tattoo heals. Let's say if this was on human skin, which is always how I'm working under the impression that I'm always going to be working on human skin. So I want to compensate for a few factors, such as ink settling. When ink settles, the lines tend to get bolder. So if that happens, then the integrity of the pixel design can change, which is what we want to avoid. So by running at a lower voltage, I'm depositing ink in a slower manner, so I'm able to move a little bit more slower on the skin, and I'm able to be more consistent with where I deposit the ink, on top of using a tighter needle configuration. It allows me to be really precise. So I do have high hopes for the healing of these pixel tattoos, and that's the theory behind the application. So I'm going to proceed again, A to B. So you can kind of see I'm working this side of the tattoo, and then I'm going to continue on that way. I can stop right here. And I'm just going to outline this square, A to B, all the way through with tapering in and out. It's important that we get those taper in and outs here. This one here could have been all one go. A to B. It's fine too. A to B. Same thing with this way. A to B. Now, even if you wanted to get a boxier look, feel free to use a 3-round liner. I feel like that's totally acceptable, especially if you're comfortable with that needle configuration. And then we're going to go A to B. and then A on over to B over here. You can see it's literally the exact same fundamental application all the way through to apply this tattoo. Just a slow, steady, mindful, consistent pace, I feel, is the best way to describe it. I have a plan, I have the application, I know the technical process, so I apply the tattoo to the best of my ability. I feel like the integrity of the pixels is actually upholding well. So A to B. Same thing right here. A to B. I'm just going to continue kind of working my way on this way here. I feel like maybe about another 10 to 15 minutes of this. The outline should be completed. So I can go from here, A to B. Same thing with up here. So this is going to be the A, this is going to be the B. Same thing with this, A. By now, hopefully you can spot where the B is going to end. That's the B. Same thing with right here. And then A on down to B. I'm trusting the process, and I'm trusting that all of the lines are going to stay pixelated and consistent the way that I need them to, and I think that's really what is guiding the tattoo. I think A to B, I think that trust right there and knowing that everything's going to line up the way that it should is why it's coming out nice and clean here, amongst other things of course. But moving front now, so A on down to B. And again, acknowledging those A to B points is really important because I could be lining piece by piece, but that leaves me more room again to create that wonkiness, and I don't want that. So A, let me get comfortable here. A, and then we're going to move on down to B, which is going to be down here, like so. Same thing over here. A on down to B, and repeat. A down to B, I'm pretty sure now you're saying it to yourself if you're following along with me here. And that's the idea behind it. There's really nothing more to this. So I have my A point right here. Navigate on over to the B. And then A right here. So moving on over to this part of the tattoo, you're going to notice that nothing's going to change here. A on over to B. We're just going to continue this on up. A on over to B, and then A to B. I'm going to go over here. Come back this way. and then work my way around that way. A to B this way. So you can kind of see and hear me thinking A to B every step of the way here. That really doesn't change at all. And then A to B. And I'm pretty sure at this point you can probably even spot where the B's are at and even where the A's at. There's no right or wrong way in which way you want to maneuver. You can do that as you see fit as the artist. Do it in a manner that best suits your needs there, so that way you don't lose your stencil. A to B down here. And then I have one last line up here, and I can continue to apply the I. So A on over to B, this last one. Just take your time, because you don't really ever want to drop the ball. I know we're almost done with the outline here, but the ball can still be dropped at any point. So I'm going to identify my A, navigate on over to the B. Same thing. A to B. Make sure you always have adequate ink flow. A on over to B. And then you can just close these off. I'm going to leave that line off for right now. Now I left this line out because on the next video when we fill it in with color, we're actually going to use brown or darker color in this area, if I remember correctly. So we're going to leave that as is, and this is the outline completed. Now from here what I can do is, again, I can switch to a bigger needle configuration and begin filling everything in, or I can stick with the same needle configuration and take my time packing everything in. That is how I go about creating a pixel style tattoo. Also, when we go about packing everything in, we can kind of fine tune any areas that we don't like when we apply the lines, but now we have the entire foundation laid out and we can work with a tattoo in a much more workable manner. So here's a top view of the Squirtle pixel tattoo, and you can see that all of the edges are nice and squared off. Now, this is the way that I go about approaching pixels. It's not by any means the correct way or only way that we can go about applying pixel style tattoos. However, this is the way that I do go about applying pixel style tattoos. I feel like this is a great place to conclude the video. We started from the stencil all the way to the technical application, and here we are. These are the results. Now, if you have any questions at all, I'm going to encourage you to drop a comment down below. I will do my absolute best to assist you in the best possible direction. We will be getting into how I go about color packing in another video, so be sure to stick around for that. Hit that subscribe button and ring that bell for me. I do have social medias under the same name as my YouTube channel. I have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I would truly appreciate the support over there as well. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you tuning in. You have a great day.